Hi again, this is Mike Siver, and this is the second part of a series of shows that we're doing called No Fences, Repairing Broken Adults. And these stories come from books that I've written that are to help people improve the quality of their lives and to ask themselves the questions about why did I do that and what role did I play in it to make it happen the way it did. And this is Sherri Kniss. She's been a cohort of mine and a partner in crime for years and years on these shows, so we're trying to kick this new series off. And it starts out with we're going to do chapter 2 out of one of my books, Why Did I Do That? And chapter 2 is called The Sponge. And it starts out with a quote from a man named Frederick Douglass, I'm sorry. It said, "It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." That's such an astute and powerful little quote. And we all know, well, I think we all know, I believe that a lot of our behaviors we have as adults come from things we learned as children. And Sherri's here with me tonight to bring her experiences and her knowledge of what she does into this conversation. Now, we know when children are born, they're like a sponge. And they're clean, they're free of anything, they don't have any ideas, any thoughts. And they're just like a sponge. And they will repeat and do and behave everything they absorb in their environment, what they're in.
But they learn very early. The first things they learn, if I cry, I'm going to get a bottle.
Yep.
Or if I cry, I'm wet. These are the first things they learn. You know, they learn how they're going to get these things taken care of. Yes.
Well, it's interesting you start out like that because basically the same sounds. Now, there are differences in parents. Mostly mothers learn it, but dads will occasionally. Children make the same sounds whether they're hungry or they're in pain.
Or they're tired.
Or they're tired, or they're grouchy.
Or they're wet.
They'll make the same sound. It's up to us as adults to recognize the slight differences in the crying. And that takes time and patience. But children don't know how to communicate, so they communicate by crying. And if they follow that, that's just one thing that I write about in the book, and we talk about throughout the books. And for more information on the books, you can contact the website below if you want to be on the show and talk about something that you've experienced that you want to pass on to other people. Contact the website, and we can get you on the show. We look forward to that. But as you were saying, with children crying, if that's allowed to keep going as they get older, that's sort of where bullies come into play. Because if I cry and make a noise, I'll get what I want. And then if I don't get what I want, I'll cry louder and make more noise till I get what I want, because they're going to shut me up by giving me what I want or change me or whatever it takes. Now that actually becomes a behavior and that's another chapter in the book that I've written, is when behaviors become beliefs. They don't have any understanding until they do it enough times. Children now believe that that works. And until at some time, and I'm sorry to say, it's usually when they get older, much older, that their belief that things work starts to get them negative consequences. Then they have to learn that belief they have to change that behavior. So when your belief becomes your behavior, then your new belief that that's costing me more than I want to pay, I now have to change my behavior. And that's the broken adults. And why do we have to wait to those extremes? Like, I'm a chaplain in the jail. When I go to the jail every week, sometimes twice a week, we have lots of inmates in there that are there because, in the end, we talk about a lot of behaviors. They did this, And a lot of them aren't criminals. They're not armed robbers. They're not bank robbers. They're not murderers. These guys are just some silly stuff. But they've been doing it all their lives, and I talk to them the same way I'm talking on the show. Why did you do that? I ask them that question. Why did you do that? Well, this is what I've always done. I said, well, why have you always done it? Mm-hmm. The consequences, are you tired of the consequences? And they'll say, yeah. Well, I said, well, then you got to change your behavior. Mm-hmm.
Only you can change it.
Only
you can change that behavior.
Yeah. And children will soak up all the environment that is around them. And they're like a brand new sponge. And next week I'm going to bring a demonstration to explain how that works. But there's so much in here. They're called what we call situational learners. In certain situations, and I'll give you a brief example, is that if a boy, I'm going to pick on dads right now, because there's so much on there now about child abuse, domestic violence is going around right now. There's a lot of going on about that. If a child watches his father abuse his mother for whatever reasons, it doesn't mean he's going to grow up to be an abuser, but the chances are higher that he will. Now, what happens is when they're growing up, they're great men in their high school, in their early dating years, in college maybe, before they get married. They're like everybody else in the neighborhood. They treat their women with respect. Sometimes, if they're old enough to know about opening doors and closing doors, they'll open doors and close doors.
Everything they see around them, everything they hear around them, everything just everything. Mm-hmm. That is going to look normal to them. So they're going to grow up and think, it's normal that I walk up and slap my wife, or it's normal that I knock my sister on the ground and make her cry.
But where sometimes it gets into trouble, you've heard a lot of women, I've heard a lot of women, and I know other people have, that is say, he was a nice guy while we were dating. He was a great man to be with while we were dating. But something happened after we got married, and he changed. And I call that the situational behavior, because these young boys that watch their fathers abuse their mothers and have a domestic violence situation, also what they understood is that's what husbands can do to wives. Mm-hmm. Not what boyfriends do to girlfriends. That doesn't enter the picture. Not what brothers do to sisters, but what husbands do to wives. So he won't be that person until he becomes a husband. Now, is he aware of that? No, I would say definitely not. But all of a sudden, in his mind that's been sitting there dormant for so many years, he's now a husband. He can now, according to his upbringing, abuse his wife. And she doesn't know what hit her, literally or figuratively, because she's not prepared for that.
Yeah, but he's going to remember what it was like being girlfriend, boyfriend, and now husband and wife.
Yeah.
He's going to change it up just like he observed it.
Yeah, because now he's going to be a husband, so now I can abuse my wife. You do what I say, or we're going to have an issue. And that's just one of the small things that we talk about on here as children growing, and how we become broken adults, and sometimes we don't even aware of it. Mm-hmm. We don't understand what happened, where did it come from. As you and I were talking about, children doing things that in the beginning are funny, and it makes everybody laugh, so they keep doing it, whatever it might be. And then all of a sudden, time after time after time after time, it starts to get boring. Now it starts to become a pain in the neck. But the child doesn't know that the adults are getting angry at it, because he's still expecting to get a laugh out of it. So how do you now take something that everybody said was okay and tell them now it's not okay? And that's called starting to teach boundaries. Because there's a point where boundaries have to be taught. And it's like men wearing hats in buildings. You know, you don't do that. You take your hat off. It's just a courtesy, just a respect. But nobody does it today, except in church, I think. Guys wear their hats in restaurants and everywhere else, it doesn't seem to matter. But depends on the restaurant you go to as well.
Well, you know, just to throw in my little perspective and my little tidbit with my master's program that I'm going through.
Right.
Understanding not only boundaries, but also understanding developmental stages that children go through.
Right.
The child that you're speaking of just happens to be my grandson, who's 15 months old, who has suddenly reached the 2 and 3-year-old stage. You know, they're very testy. They test the waters, and they get very thick testing the waters. They're very, very smart, and they know what their surroundings are. At that point, they're now starting to talk. They're listening very well, you know, and they're watching their environment. They know what's happening, but yeah, they are going to test the waters. And at some point, when do you put your foot down and say, okay, well, this is not funny anymore? Oh, I'm telling you, some of the things are really funny, okay, but, you know, what do we do, and at what point do we stop those things from happening, you know?
That's a hard question, and it's a hard answer. It's an individual family answer, it has to
Right.
be, but you can't wait too long. If you wait too long, it then becomes a behavior. And they're gonna get very confused on, well, now they can't do it, but it was all right before. And also, the behaviors are a problem when an older sibling, it only has to be a year or two older, can't do things anymore, but the younger sibling can. Because now it's funny for them. They're learning and growing and learning and growing. They don't understand this growth and maturity level thing. They're only like 4 or 5 years
Right.
old. Another one's 2 years old. So there has to be boundaries on, you're 5 years old now. You don't do 2-year-old things.
Right.
Or how come I can't stay up till 9 o'clock when my brother can? Well, when you get 6 years old, you can stay up till 9 o'clock. Right now, you're only 3 years old. You go to bed at 7 o'clock. And you have to start setting boundaries and expectations of children. Well, when I get 6 years old, then, oh, I can't wait to become 6. Then I can stay up till 9.
Right.
But if you don't do that, if you don't do that consistently, and we have a saying that we use in our practice a lot, it's called being firm, fair, and consistent all the time. Be firm, fair, and consistent. And I don't believe in punishment and reward. That's for dogs, maybe. I believe in reward and no reward. And you have to learn how to deal with that and how to interpret that, that it's a successful way to teach children, you were supposed to get this, because you're inappropriate, you just don't get it now. I'm not punishing you. You've lost the right to have that. You've lost the right to do that. You can earn the right back. And it becomes a process that you have to teach the children about earning and losing. They've lost or they've earned. I'm not taking away, as a parent, I'm never taking anything away from you. You've lost.
It's been there for the taking. You just chose at that point not to take it.
Well,
You
you've
know,
lost
that's
it.
on you.
You've lost it. You can earn it back. I'm not going to take it away from you. I'm not going to be the bad guy here. You're the bad guy because you chose the behavior that you lost that particular item, toy, whatever it might be. Now, this is easy to say, and we're saying it real quick here, but it's all in the book, and it explains it and breaks them out on how to deal with that. It's going to take about 3 or 4 more weeks just to get through this chapter 2 of the book. And we've got several more to go and a couple books to cover. But learning to repair broken adults, the one thing I think a lot of adults don't listen is they don't listen. Because other adults will tell you, you know, that's by actions or words, that's inappropriate. That's wrong. Why do you do that? What role did you play in that? We as adults need to start looking at ourselves before we blame other people. And where did we learn that from?
Where did we learn it from, and where can we fix it, or how can we fix it?
Okay, we're done. Thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you.